The views, comments, and opinions of the following program do not necessarily reflect those of Morris Media Studios, MorrisMediaLive.com. The views, comments, and opinions of the following program do not necessarily reflect those of Morris Media Studios, MorrisMediaLive.com, or its affiliates. Listener discretion is advised.
All right, we're black, and welcome to Uncle Bobby's Country Corner, where real men don't play. This show today is dedicated to the legacy of the late, great Marvin Gaye, who passed away 34 years ago on April 1st. And a song he did that became prophetic then as well as now was What's Going On? And on the line, I have with me someone who has answers to some very important questions that we're going to pose today. And I'd like to introduce him right now. His name is Wendell Stemley. He's the president of the National Association of Minority Contractors and the founder and CEO of Black IPO. Wendell, welcome to Uncle Bobby's Country Corner.
How you doing?
Man, if I was doing any better, I had to take something for it.
Oh, thanks. Oh, that's good.
That kind of threw you off there, knowing that this is a ball of confusion that we're dealing with. One of the reasons I asked you to return to Uncle Bobby's Country Corner, in addition to your prolific work in the area of construction and finance management, you have keenly followed some very ominous trends in the marketplace as it relates to money and the accumulation of debt. And I had promised some friends of mine and the people who are watching this show right now in different parts of the country and around the world, did they have any clue as to what it means to owe anybody damn near $21 trillion? And the only person I know within my scope of friends that has some understanding of what that debt constitutes and what it means to everyday people is Wendell Stemley. So first of all, Wendell, how do we end up owing the world damn near $21 trillion?
Well, we borrow money on a daily basis to satisfy the debt that we already have. And then as that debt accumulates to even more money, you end up owing $100 billion. And you end up having $100 million a day debt that you have to pay to foreign countries just to have enough money to pay the bills on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So,
okay, before you go any further, because those are some staggering numbers. Most communities, some municipalities, and even some states don't manage $100 million a day. So kind of help me get my mind around $100 million a day to do what? What does that money do?
It's just like you have a credit card and you have an interest on the card, and to be able to keep using that card on a monthly basis, you got to make the minimum payment, or you got to make the interest payment that month to use the card. So that represents how much a day we have to pay just to use the credit card that we are financing a lot of operations out of. So if you want to give away $1.5 trillion tax plan, then you counter that with cutting $1.5 trillion out of Medicare, Medicaid, and then the residual gets added to the $100 million a day in debt that you owe that can't be covered from the Medicare, Medicaid reduction.
Well, you just used an example that I want people to be able to get their minds around. When you talk about Medicare, Medicaid, that encompasses old and young folks. So what does that mean to Big Mama and LaQuisha's little old child?
Well, depending on what services they identify that will be eliminated or cut out of the $1.5 trillion to offset the tax break, it could mean pay-as-you-go dialysis. It could mean no Head Start prenatal or school care. It could mean a lot of things that get cut for the ordinary citizen that can't benefit from the bulk of the tax breaks because it's a corporate upper middle class, and there's some trickle-down effect, but it won't balance out to the effect it will have on those people that are dependent on those programs.
So, again, we're talking about $100 million a day that we have to service debt with, right?
Correct.
$100 million a day. Now, I saw something in one of the news feeds the other day that we are getting ready to borrow a substantial amount of money here in the very near future just to stay on par with the debt service. Do you know what that figure is?
No, but it doesn't take long. If you're doing $100 million in a day, and you need $1 billion in a week. I mean, it doesn't take long. It adds up pretty quickly. We have to do something to get the debt under control because that's money that could be going back in the state and local government to assist with a lot of day-to-day activities. People get disillusioned. They watch the stock market climb and they have the illusion of feeling good, but the economy is so fragile. We saw this week, you can make a comment about Amazon or Google and bring the stock market down, 1,000 points. So, and no matter how high it goes, if you're not a shareholder of that particular company, it's really no way for it to benefit anything but its shareholders and its own personal employees. So it's an illusion of inclusion in the economic process that the majority of working class folks are just not involved in that to that magnitude.
So this $21 trillion figure, break down what that means to the average American citizen.
Well, the future is mortgaged. The kids will have to absorb that debt because that kind of debt is going to outlive most of us. And so now you're strapping them with the obligations. It's just like the battle they're having with gun control. I mean, no matter what side of the fence you sit on, it's been a battle for 50 years. And now we're leaving a generation in Florida. Those youngsters are standing up, but it will take another generation to fix the problems that this generation either is unwilling to or incapable of addressing.
So, I want to get back to the specifics of this threshold that we are rapidly approaching of $21 trillion. What happens when we reach that plateau of $21 trillion of debt constitutionally?
Well, it's at 23.7. Some people are at $24 trillion. At some point, essential social services of operating the government will get paid, and the government will have to start enacting massive cuts to non-essential programs. And then you get a catastrophic lifestyle adjustment, because at that point it's a bad situation.
Now, just in terms of a forecast, how far are we from that particular threshold, whatever that number may be?
Well, Bobby, we're at 20. That's bad enough. That's the be-all, end-all, that we somehow managed to get to $20 trillion. So the alarm clocks and fire alarms should be going on all over the country saying this is not sustainable and this has to get addressed. And whatever plan we have to put that as a priority to address it, because you don't want people losing social services, not being able to go to outpatient care, cutting everything that makes life normal just to be able to sustain your debt obligation. That's what you will transition to. The debt obligation can get so far out of control that life as we know it as an everyday norm will change dramatically. You know, there's no Head Start, there's no pre-K, there's no after-school care, there's no free lunch program. There's, you know, a lot of things can get adjusted real quick if we can't service the debt.
What about Social Security?
And we've heard that Social Security was untouchable, but we've watched it be touched many times in modern era. So nothing's off the table. Nothing's off the table. The age of Social Security is being played around with when you will become eligible. I mean, at this rate, you know, Social Security may not kick in till, I don't know, 75. You got to pay off that kind of debt. So.
Now, who are some of our principal debtors?
Well, China, Japan, it's more foreign interests that, you know, we're borrowing the money from.
Does the Bank of England in any way play into our accumulated debt?
Anybody with some money, when you got to borrow that kind of money on a daily basis, plays into it. You just borrowing money wherever you can get, you know, wherever you can get it.
Now, let's imagine a world in which Wendell Stemley was in charge of United States finance. What would be some of the remedies to this situation that you would impose?
That's hard to, you know, that's a tough question. Yeah, don't get me wrong. None of these have a simplistic answer. There's no magic wand to $20 trillion, you know. Mm-hmm. It's going to take some real thought and how to work out of this situation, and it's going to require those that do well to do a little bit more, and it's going to require taking a common sense approach to reducing cost of doing, but we got to have revenue, and only, you know, the revenue base is shrinking because we're trying to appease what everybody wants. We want the social program on one hand, but we want the tax cut on the other hand, and without revenue in the system, it's very hard to accomplish all the objectives.
Well, how do we increase revenue from your vantage point?
Well, you increase the gross domestic product, but that might be a little more for folks to understand. But basically, you have a tax base, and you have to have a certain amount of money coming in to be able to balance out the amount of money you have going out. The hope was that we could grow the economy to a point to where it would, the momentum would take over that, but it's so fragile. I mean, economy could be doing good on Monday, and you have 2 or 3 press releases Tuesday and Wednesday, and we see the result of the market fluctuation by, you know, Thursday morning. So it's not it's not a simplistic, but it's not out of. We had a balanced budget the last time in the Clinton administration. If we can't say anything, we can say that the budget was balanced at that time. Since then, we just had the collapse of the banking industry, and we've had
the real estate market. Yeah.
You know, so we've had a number of things happen, and different folks blame different people, but at the end of the day, the debt has just increased consistently, and with no stop in sight. So we have to get a process in where we can get back to, if not balance, just cut the dial of losing money down, so we can readjust the economy.
One of the major spokes in the American wheel, also known as our economy, is the construction industry. There's been a lot of talk the last few years about a massive infusion into the rebuilding of America's highways and byways and bridges, et cetera, et cetera. First of all, what has kept that from happening, and what is the consequence of us not rebuilding America's infrastructure?
Well, I think when you let anything, it's like if you own a car and you never take it in for service, eventually the car got a lot of problems. It's not just the tires, it's the water hoses and everything else. So we've gotten to a point where our electrical grid, our water system, infrastructure, highways, and airports, they all need improvement. So we need a strategic plan of how to do that. But at the same time, we have to balance between the defense budget and the infrastructure budget and try to have a balance that accomplishes both objectives. But you can't say, well, I'm just going to throw more debt at the situation, because that is cutting off a lot of money that could be used for rebuilding our cities and rebuilding our communities.
So they just added, what was it, 64 billion, or was it more than that, to the defense budget this last on this omnibus bill, whatever that means. I looked it up and I still don't quite understand what they're saying. But I guess the short version of it is all of the stuff that they should have passed at some point before then, they just threw it all in the package, and boom, you got this new budget.
Yeah, it's hard to fix anything overnight, and when you defer maintenance on your infrastructure or on your defense, and then you try to come up with a overnight fix, it is a costly fix. So we're in a kind of a situation, but it can be managed. We can work our way through it. It's just going to require folks sitting down. Nobody's going to get everything they want, but they have to figure out how does the infrastructure and the Social Security and Medicare, Medicaid, and the defense budget all exist in functionality without driving up the debt even more.
One of the other issues I'd like to briefly discuss with you is the alleged shortage in the United States for skilled and unskilled labor, particularly in the construction industry. What impact does that have on the overall healthiness of the construction industry, and what does that mean in terms of trying to get people into those career paths?
Well, in one way you have a shortage because we've trained certain groups of individuals in the country, and we've omitted training other groups. You can't have a need for 1 million workers and then have African-American male unemployment at 2 and 3 million people. So we got to do a better job of training the available resources that are here, so they are ready to be part of the economic system. So it's not, some people believe there's just a shortage of workers, and then others of us that look at it from a different point of view say, well, there's not a shortage of workers, there's a shortage of who we train to work.
So what is a remedy or two in terms of us looking inward as African Americans, black people, whatever you want to call us, to gain some access to these, in some instances, exceptionally high-paying jobs within the construction industry?
Well, I mean, the communities are sitting back and hoping that the politicians alone by themselves serve their best interests, but sometimes they need to hear from you. You need to be at your mayor's office and your city council's office and really try to understand how is this new infrastructure or how is this new housing project going to affect employment in my community. So that becomes a responsibility of all of us. Every citizen in a community shouldn't sit back and wait on a local representative. They need to take action also and make sure that their sons and daughters have the opportunity to participate.
How did you get to a point, Wendell, where, because you went back and got the certification as a construction management expert, so to speak, why did you get that particular credential?
Well, with anything that you want to do, if you want to be a professional boxer, somebody labels you that based on the training that you have. Whatever you want to do in life, you're going to have something that says you are qualified and certified to do whatever you want to do. So we just have to look at how is the game laid out, how to play the game, and how to be part of that process.
So how important is that credential in the modern era? Because I remember years ago, the aspiration was to just simply become a general contractor. And I guess about 30 years ago, I started seeing the phrase construction management, and that's the top of the heap. So what is it that is unique between the general contractor and the contract manager?
Well, the contractor is more concerned with building the building and the trade associated with building a building, where the construction manager he has to worry about the budget, the capital improvement bond that the owner may be using, how to best utilize the resources, how many general contractors do we need. It's just another level of being able to support an owner in their build-out plan.
Well, as we begin to wrap this up, I'd like to congratulate you for having been brought into the biggest project in town right now, which is the new Rams Stadium. And if you would kind of tell people what your engagement, if you can, in the new construction of Rams Stadium. I don't think they gave it another name yet. And what that means in terms of your ability to impact the Los Angeles economic community.
Well, Los Angeles is a tricky market. I mean, they have mega contractors running that job, the Turners, the E-Com, and what you have to do is figure out, what's the level of opportunity, what's the rules for engagement, and what do you have to do to get involved with it. You never look at how big something is and exclude yourself. You look at what you can do and figure out how you can be involved in that process.
Now, we have a project here locally that you are aware of, via our relationship. Right here in the Crenshaw District, the renovations of the landmark institution, also known as the Vision Theater. And there's been some complications in terms of getting people, first and foremost, aware of the project and then positioned to participate in that. Once a project starts, what are some of the things that you learned over the years that will enable you to kind of maneuver your way into a situation that they say is otherwise closed to you?
Well, that's why I say that the local community has to be a part of advocating to the mayor, to the city council, and others as to the enrichment of their community and employment and vendors and suppliers. Because once these projects get let and they get on the way, it's very hard to turn a ship around back in the harbor. once it leaves the dock. So it's a lot of front-end work you have to do. There's a lot of getting engaged with what's going on in your community. And all of us want to see young people employed and be able to change their lives. So if we're really about what we say we're about, it becomes almost a cultural responsibility to be a part of engaging local development and redevelopment in your community.
So at the end of the day, we got to roll up our sleeves. First of all, get the information and then develop the will to connect the dots to the point where we fully understand, first and foremost, this is our money and that it's going to affect the quality of our lives, whether we're directly related to any given institution or discipline, work-related discipline. And I think I have delivered on my promise today to give people some information as we begin to summarize what we've talked about for the last few minutes, and that is this debt crisis actually does impact everybody that'll hear this show one way or the other. Is that a safe assumption to make?
Yeah, and I'll just leave you that I was on the phone with Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. If you look at the infrastructure budget, 18.4 cents of the revenue that generates $200 billion comes from the gas tax. So now you're standing at the pump, you put 18 cents worth of gas in the pump, but you don't have no gas in the tank. Then you pay the state tax 40 cents, so now you got 68 cents at the pump, and you still don't have no gas in the tank. And they're trying to tax at the local and state at the city level. At some point, you will have $1 in the pump and no gas in the tank. So it's your money that is being used for the defense budget, for the infrastructure budget, for Medicare, Medicaid, but we allow it to be dictated like we don't have a right to participate.
So in other words, you're telling me that that explains the difference between the price of gas. You're in Atlanta right now. You travel all over the country, just on a frequent flyer basis. That what's gas at the pump in Atlanta right now, roughly?
About $2.30.
$2.30, while we're paying $3.49 for regular gasoline in California. So you're saying the difference basically is those taxes.
Oh, yeah, and, they set market price based on, you guys might have more of an appetite, so maybe they'll charge you
appetite my ass. We driving less and paying more. That's what's going on out here, man. Wendell, once again, man, I'd like to just, thank you not only for coming on to the show, but for over 20 years now being somebody that I could rely on for opportunities as well as the kind of information that makes a difference not just in my life but in other people's lives. And I look forward to having you in studio the next time you're out here on the West Coast, because there are some projects that are underway and on the books that we're going to look at. I'm going to look at one of them tomorrow. And again, man, thank you so much for stopping by Uncle Bobby's Country Corner.
Yeah, take care.
All right. We're going to take a short pause and we'll be right back. All right, we're we're very black. We got a brother on the phone calling from Fort Worth, Texas, and it's a component that I'm going to be adding to the show since I'm doing Facebook Live. Over the past few years of my broadcast career, I've had an opportunity to interface with people through Facebook and Twitter and what have you. And the brother on the line, he sent me a direct message from Facebook it's been about 3 weeks ago. And I said, man, I'm going to chop it up with you on the phone at my first occasion. So, J.D. Jimerson IV, welcome to Uncle Bobby's Country Corner.
Man, what's up, man? I'm glad to be here, man. This lifetime, rubbing shoulders with Uncle Bobby Glanton-Smith at that Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
Now, that's why
I'm loving this book.
Oh, man, I appreciate you getting it, man, because I wrote that for your generation and the generation that follows you along the way. Real Men Don't Play is the book that he's talking about. Give me one story in the book that has impacted you the most.
Man, just I ain't gonna even lie. I was just flipping through the beginning and just got halfway through Fred Williams. But man, just the way you lay your words and you get straight to the point, and it just, you know how everything is backwards in this world, and just reading that, you just give a brother a whole lot of shortcuts that people could spend their whole lives and never catch on to just by glancing at the book.
Well, I appreciate, the support. And tell the audience a little bit about yourself, what you do for a living, and what some of your ambitions are.
Oh, my name is J.D. Jimerson. My pops was in the Air Force, so my mom and dad was born out here in Fort Worth. That's North Texas, DFW. And, I'm one of them babies that was an Air Force baby. I've been to Turkey, been moving around. But with that being said, I had my mother and my father in my life, so, a lot of people have bad stuff to say about their father, so I had a real good foundation coming up. And my mom, they threw me in special ed in the 4th grade after my mom and my dad separated. And my mom, she always was real good at encouraging me to make this music and make movies, because I was an entertainer my whole life. And I made about 19 albums with original beats and at least about 12 different little mixtapes out here in Fort Worth over the years, because I'm 38 years old now. And I made a movie in the hood in Lake Como, Texas. That's right here on the west side of Fort Worth. Mm-hmm. It's called The Killer, man, about some possessed marijuana taking over the hood. It's like a horror comedy where I play about 3 characters inspired by Eddie Murphy. Mm-hmm. And, man, it just good. Like I never did really make no more money off these CDs or my movies than I made off my lowest paying job at the car wash. But I tell you one thing, I got to meet a whole lot of real good people. I got to build a whole lot of good relationships. And I feel like even if I had a whole lot of money, it wouldn't be enough to pay for what I done put together to me.
Well, that's all that really matters. And I'm going to be, tracking your career. We put a few little things down via your music aspirations. Right. And just always remember, small strokes will fell a big oak if you just keep on cutting.
That's right. So
stay in there, brother, and we're going to move along with the show, man. And thank you for stopping by Uncle Bobby's Country Corner. Ladies and gentlemen, that's J.D. Jimerson IV.
Thank you, man. Much love, man. Shout out to 5150 and the Zoe Williams Show, man.
You got
Much love, Country Corner.
All right, take care. We're getting ready to spin into a subject matter that has got to catch fire. As we had in the first segment, we talked about the economy in terms of the national aspect of the economy. I want to take a step outside of that and share with you a video that was brought to my attention via Facebook a few days ago that has just really resonated with me. So without any further ado, I want you to just let this soak in for a minute and see what it does to your opinions about what it is that we should be focusing on as we try to come out of this ball of confusion.
One thing that keeps me puzzled, despite having studied finance and economics at the world's best universities, the following question remains unanswered. Why is it that 5,000 units of our currency is worth 1 unit of your currency, where we are the ones with the actual gold reserves? quite evident that the aid is in fact not coming from the West to Africa, but from Africa to the Western world. The Western world depends on Africa in every possible way, since alternative resources are scarce out here. So how does the West ensure that the free aid keeps coming? By systematically destabilizing the wealthiest African nations and their systems, and all that backed by huge PR campaigns, leaving the entire world under the impression that Africa is poor and dying and merely surviving on the mercy of the West. Well done, Oxfam, UNICEF, Red Cross, Life Aid, and all the other organizations that continuously run multi-million-dollar advertisement campaigns depicting charity porn to sustain that image of Africa globally. Ad campaigns paid for by innocent people under the impression to help with their donations. While one hand gives under the flashing lights of cameras, the other takes in the shadows. We all know the dollar is worthless, while the euro is merely charged with German intellect and technology, and maybe some Italian pasta. How can one expect donations from nations that have so little? It is super sweet of you to come with your colored paper in exchange for our gold and diamonds. But instead, you should come empty-handed, filled with integrity and honor. We want to share with you our wealth and invite you to share with us. The perception is that a healthy and striving Africa would not disperse its resources as freely and cheaply, which is logical. Of course, it would instead sell its resources at world market prices, which in turn would destabilize and weaken Western economies, established on the post-colonial free meal system. Last year, the IMF reports that 6 out of 10 of the world's fastest growing economies are in Africa, measured by their GDP growth. The French Treasury, for example, is receiving about $500 billion year in, year out, in foreign exchange reserves from African countries based on colonial debt they forced them to pay. Former French President Jacques Chirac stated in an interview recently that we have to be honest and acknowledge that a big part of the money in our banks comes precisely from the exploitation of the African continent. In 2008, he stated that without Africa, France will slide down in the rank of a third world power. This is what happens in the human world, the world we have created. Have you ever wondered how things work in nature? One would assume that in evolution the fittest survives. However, in nature, any species that is overhunting, overexploiting the resources they depend on as nourishment, natural selection would sooner or later take the predator out, because it offsets the balance.
When I first saw that particular segment, I got chills, simply because I've always wondered why Africa was so disjointed economically, and what were some of the consequences of that, and how did it affect our relationship with African countries, especially when it comes to trying to create a commercial link. And I know there's been fits and starts over the years where people that I know personally have traveled to Africa. And there was a brother by the name of Chilton Alphonse, who I worked with many years ago back in the 90s, may he rest in peace. He moved to Ghana, and probably while he was still living in Ghana, they had a meeting of African nations in 2007, and they started at that point what has since become the United States of Africa. They've been unable to consolidate all of the key nations under that accord and to this extent, we haven't seen any real measurable progress with respect to coming up with a common currency. Gaddafi was one of the people who spearheaded that effort in the early stages, and he woke up dead one day, and that kind of slowed things down a bit. But the notion that Africa has the ability to consolidate under a currency is something that we should all be particularly interested in with respect to widening the field of play that would enable us to use that common identity, if you will, to create economic opportunities that are not coming back to this country. As the lady said in the video, how is it that someone could have a currency where one piece of their paper is worth 5,000 times more than yours, and you are the repository for the precious metals that are valuable to the world? And that's a question that I think we should all not only spend some time trying to process, but figure out a way to become more engaged in finding a bridge that we can cross that will draw us closer together as we deal with a number of issues that we got to deal with in terms of how do we eat in this country. And with that being said, there was another subject matter I wanted to deal with briefly today before the show closes, and that is how we ended up in a situation where everybody, with a few exceptions, young and old, are on some form of medication. And someone sent me a feed a few days ago, and I've since ran it several times, about the evolution of pharmaceutical medicine. And I was somewhat surprised to find that it was linked to a gentleman by the name of John D. Rockefeller. In 1900, he was already a very, very wealthy man. And he tried to figure out, how do I expand upon my bounty and my territory? And what he came upon was the opportunity to monopolize the oil, petrochemical, and medical industries all at the same time. He put up $100 million in 1900 to execute a plan that you and I are affected by some 118 years later. What he did was he went around the country in collaboration with the Carnegie Foundation and began to influence the university system and the hospitals with the intent of moving people away from homeopathic medicine and natural remedies to things that he could produce in a laboratory. In other words, a pill for every ill. And through the collaboration between the Carnegies and the Rockefellers, they dispatched a gentleman by the name of Abraham Flexner, who went around the country recruiting colleges and universities to take these grants and other financial incentives from the Rockefellers and the Carnegies to institute this plan that they had put together to consolidate the treatment of all Americans with respect to sick care, not health care, but sick care. And what was interesting about it is he came up with what he called the Flexner Report. That's what it gave birth to, and that's where modern medicine comes from, this collaboration between the Carnegies and the Rockefellers. What does that have to do with wherever you are right now and wherever you're doing and what's in your medicine cabinet? It has everything to do with it. Hey, excuse me for just 1 second. We're going to take a short pause and come back with another very special guest. Hold on just 1 second. We'll be right back. Okay, just to close out the story about how we all ended up subjected to what I consider to be murder with a forethought that has been perpetrated on the American people for 118 years. And just to give you an economic snapshot, 15% of every dollar produced in the United States is spent on sick care. And so if you want further information about that, just Google Big Pharma J.D. Rockefeller. And it'll be a sobering reminder of how important it is to control your own narrative and look out for your own self-interest, particularly when it comes to your health. With that being said, as I started out at the beginning of the show, dedicating it to the memory and the legacy of the marvelous one, Marvin Gaye, we have on the line a dear, dear, dear friend of mine by the name of Jay Lamont. Many people around the world know him as Jammin Jay Lamont. Jay, welcome to Uncle Bobby's Country Corner.
Hey, what's up, brother? How you doing?
Man, I know you're driving back from Las Vegas, and I've got a picture of you and Marvin Gaye's sister
Yes.
that you took at sound check last night. So kind of walk us through what happened in Las Vegas last night.
Yes, well, Viola Gay, who is the youngest sister of Marvin, a very sweet lady. I've known her, who I've known for almost 10 years, and I actually met her. Matter of fact, I met her through you, Bobby. Now that I realize that, I met her through you, and this is actually my second time doing this event. When she heard me sing at that time, she asked me, a couple of years ago, could I come to Vegas and perform for her tribute concert to Marvin Gaye? And I said I sure would. And so last night I ran into her, and we hugged and had a great time, had a great sound check. And so for those that didn't get to see the show, you missed a great show. I had a chance to sing "I Want You." This is one of her favorite songs from Marvin. And I also sung a song off of the album that included Sexual Healing, which is called the Midnight Love album.
Uh-huh.
And there's a ballad that Marvin did on that album called "Till Tomorrow."
Mm-hmm.
And I sung that song, and she was just so overwhelmed. She didn't know what to think. The crowd really received me well, almost a standing ovation. So it was wonderful. But she's a great person, a great friend, and I'm glad to call her my friend. But it was a great moment, Bobby. It was a great moment, and we had a great crowd last night. So, and she, matter of fact, I just got through chatting with her, and she reached out to thank me again for coming, and I told her whatever you might need, just let me know. So she definitely wants me to come next year for the next tribute show. So I said I'd be honored to do it.
Well, at some point, man, I'm gonna get you in studio, and we're gonna have her on the show and allow her to just recollect the legacy and the interaction that she was fortunate enough to have at a blood level to one of the greatest entertainers who ever lived, Marvin Gaye.
Definitely. You will love her, Bobby. She's a great person, and trust me, she's got a lot to tell because I know she's did a couple of interviews yesterday. And so I'm definitely going to help you out in getting her on for you. So I assure you that you will enjoy speaking to her.
So now, what was the two songs that you said you did?
Okay, you remember the classic, "I Want You." I want you the right way.
That ain't the way you sung it last night.
Oh no, I can't do it like that. That'll be $5. You can drop it in the slot right there. That goes right through my cell phone.
Oh,
but no, it was great. I did that classic "I Want You," and then the song "Till Tomorrow." If for those that may not know that particular song, you can pull it up on YouTube. That is the jam right there. Matter of fact, Bobby, I remember the day when we lost Marvin. I was a senior in high school, believe it or not, getting ready to graduate. And I remember my mother and I were riding, coming home from church because, mind you, the day that he got shot, it was on a Sunday. And we had just got out of church, and we were riding somewhere, and I remember the radio station we were listening to was playing "Let's Get It On" for some reason. And I remember the song faded out, and it was nothing but complete silence. My mom and I were talking, and at one point I looked at the radio like, okay, I don't hear nobody talking. And the DJ came on and was talking very slowly. If you just tuned in, we regret to announce the tragic news that Marvin Gaye is dead. We was like, what? And I remember watching Soul Train because probably a year prior to his death, Don Cornelius brought Marvin on Soul Train and did the whole show. I'll never forget it. And it was to help promote the album that he put out with Sexual Healing. He did Sexual Healing, and he did this song called "Till Tomorrow." And man, when I tell you, it was unbelievable. Yeah, but he did the whole show. Marvin spoke with him, interviewed him, and everything. It was a great moment. I remember telling Viola about that too.
Well, you know, I had the guy that connected us, nephew Tommy Mild, on the show a couple of weeks ago in studio with Mickey Stevenson and Antoine Fisher. And I remember meeting you through Tommy, and we talked about that a little bit as well. And as it connects to, you know, memorializing the great Marvin Gaye, you performed at Jim Brown's 70th and 75th birthday at my bequest. And one of the great stories that Jim told me about his relationship with Marvin was that when he first recorded the epic album, What's Going On, it sat on the shelf at Motown for about a year because it just wasn't a part of the Motown sound. And Jim told me he came up to his house very discouraged because that's the direction he wanted to go in. And that was the second turning point in his career. The first one happened when he first got to Motown and he wanted to be Frank Sinatra. And Mickey Stevenson had to literally coerce him and bribe him into doing R&B. And to the extent they collaborated on Stubborn Kind of Fella and a couple of other major songs that they co-wrote together. And so Jim was telling me how they were sitting in his living room one day and Marvin came in and he said, man, I just can't take it, man. I'm tired of waiting on them to release What's Going On. And Jim said, well, let me listen to some of it. And he said he played some of that. Other than the people at the studio when he recorded it, Jim was the first person that heard What's Going On.
Wow.
And he said, you sitting right where Marvin sat that day. And I was like, man, I got a rush from it, you know. I got a rush from being in the seat that the great Marvin Gaye sat in and to know how lasting that album would be and how it became, for my generation, the soundtrack of our lives.
Yeah. But you know what's funny about that, Bobby? I don't know if you heard the story where Berry Gordy did not want to put that album out. I don't know if you heard that story.
Oh, yeah. He told it to Jim.
That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable because he said Marvin had called, and I think Berry said he was on vacation and said to him, look, I got this stuff that I want you to hear. It's kind of unlike what I do, and I think Barry tried to talk him down. Marvin, what do you think you're doing?
Right.
Don't nobody want to hear about social issues and all that.
Right.
And who would have thought that this album would be just critically acclaimed, one of the best albums of our time?
That's right.
And I don't think anybody knows this, Bobby. And I don't know if you know this, and I was talking to Ziola about this. Did you know that Marvin did not win a Grammy for that album? None of it. He was nominated for a Grammy for that album, but did not win. He did not get his first Grammy until he did Sexual Healing. And
that's a part of this conversation and our challenge going forward. We can no longer allow other people to establish our narrative.
Right.
You see, that cannot happen. And I hope that the family is able to come together and work out something with Barry so that story can be told in its magnificence, man, because it's got all the elements of a blockbuster film, man, you know.
Right. Yeah, because she told me about that because she said Marvin was nominated for a Grammy for that album, but he lost. They said I think he lost to Lou Rawls because I think Lou Rawls had a hit album at the time. I can't remember the name. I think it was Tobacco Road or something. Mm-hmm. There was some speculation of who it was, but I remember the speech because, matter of fact, if you go on YouTube, the clip of him on the Grammys winning that Grammy Award is on YouTube. And believe it or not, Rick James, it's so funny when I think about it. Rick James and Grace Jones were the ones announcing the nominees. And the first thing Marvin Gaye said when he came out, he said, I've waited over 20-some years for something like this. I have never gotten it until now. He said that. I've waited and waited. So he was really, really happy about that. His first and only Grammy for Sexual Healing, which was the best R&B song of 1983.
Well, Jay, if you're going to be in town this coming Sunday, are you in town?
Let's see. Yeah, I'll be here.
Okay.
I'll be here. Got into LA.
I'm formally inviting you to an event that Mickey Stevenson is having, honoring Mayor Garcetti and Bishop Charles Blake and some other people, and he's going to also make an announcement about his Azusa Street project. And as I told you earlier today on the phone, I want you two guys to meet because the show that we did a couple of weeks ago was about not just talking about it, but about being about it. And I'm certain that there's a role in Azusa Street, the revitalization or whatever it is the final title is going to be. There's a role in it for you because it's a musical.
Yeah.
And since you're a church man,
Look. Yeah, we need to bring you to church, Bobby. We need to show Bobby Glanton-Smith what a church is.
But in the meantime, brother, that's going to be Sunday at 3:00, and I'll send you the information for that, and then you can, take it from there, man. I think that's going to be a good mix with you and Mickey, man.
Yeah, send me a reminder on that. I'd love to check that out, man, if I'm able to. Yes, most definitely.
And what you got going on? You working anywhere this week?
Well, let's see. Like I said, just did the Marvin Gaye tribute in Las Vegas. The next thing I got coming up, Uncle Bobby, is your boy. Do you know about Uncle Charlie?
Charlie Wilson, yeah. Uncle
Formerly
Charlie.
of the Gap Band. Charlie Wilson is performing in San Diego April the 14th, which is a Saturday, and I'm going to be on that show. I'll be emceeing and opening up the show. It's going to be Charlie Wilson along with Monica, Joe, and After 7. So that's the next thing I'm doing. And then coming up later on, I've got a couple of surprises. So people can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Jammin Jay Lamont. Spell it all the way out, Jammin Jay Lamont. But that's the next thing, Uncle Charlie.
Man, thank you so much as I close out today's show. Jammin Jay Lamont, a friend that I'm so glad to have had all these many years, man. And thank you so much for stopping by Uncle Bobby's Country Corner, my brother.
Anytime, my man. Anytime you need me, holler at me.
You got it, man. Thank you,
all
Jay.
Right. All right.
This show, I hope, again, is indicative of what my mission is, and that is models of possibility and best practices. In the coming weeks, I'm going to make some variations to try to, be able to be more interactive with the show. And if you have any suggestions, you can reach me at Glanton-Smith on Twitter, or you can reach me at Facebook, Bobby Glanton-Smith. And my email is bobby@realmendon'tplay. And as usual, I'd like to thank this incredible sister who continues to show great patience working out the kinks of my show, O.G. Portis. I love you for it, sister. And I close as I usually do. Thank you for letting me be myself again. Until we meet again, have a great evening and a wonderful day.